Good. We had a chance to speak, I think, earlier or in 2020, but great to talk to you again. And of course, the new project, which is our great Arc of Life.
It's great. By
Fantastic stuff.
I'm Jeremy, Billy. Nice to meet you.
Hey man, nice to meet you.
I know. Listen, I'm pulling a Jeremy. I'm going right into it. He taught me that. He said, "You just got to start."
Yeah, just go right into it. So this new project, Arc of Life, we're just looking at the credits and the guys that are playing on this, and this is basically like a brand new Yes in a way.
Well, it is certainly a brand new band. I mean, Yes is Yes and has a long legacy and history and continues to go on its journey. So, but there's been a lot of satellite bands outside of Yes, as you know, I'm sure, Asia, Conspiracy. I had Circa with Alan and Tony K and Jimmy back in the day. And then, Jeff Downs is doing Chris Braid with the DBA project, and Steve's got his trio. So there are many satellite bands around. Yes, is the mothership, but we all have time to do other things and pursue our art. So That's what this is, really.
May I just take 1 second to say that DBA album, because I interviewed Jeff last week, is fan-fucking-tastic. That is is a great album. And, and by the way,
top-notch. Top-notch musicians. I'm sorry. So
yeah.
Sure.
So Arc of Life, the self-titled debut, is coming out on February 12th via Frontier Records. You get it wherever music is sold. The first ever single, You Make It Real, pretty good. Pretty good first put out, guys. I mean, is this just a sample of what we can expect on this album?
Excuse me. Well, it's it's the first point of entry, if you will, and it's simple, yet it's got complexities. If you look under the hood a little deeper, there's some things going on inside that song that lend itself to that more proggy thing that we're all used to. But I think that's the first good point of entry. And then the album, as you get into it as a listener, sort of flowers and opens up as you go and becomes even more depth filled and textured and layered, and the songs get a bit longer. So it's kind of nice. I mean, I think it's a good choice. It was the label's choice. And
damn label. Always the label.
It's so funny because most of my friends who I've given a taste to check out the song, they all say my wife loves this song. She won't stop playing it.
Hey, that's good though. Come on, man.
They have to come if the wife wants to go, but it's not the other way around so much.
Yeah, exactly. And
no, it's true.
How many progressive bands got the chicks that are digging it? So
not a bad thing.
Let me just quickly ask you, because the press release says that the whole sort of mission statement of Arc of Life is to keep the progressive rock philosophy blossoming and keep pushing boundaries. How would you describe sort of the progressive rock philosophy? What does that mean?
Well, to me, it means a genre in music that is the most freeing to express yourself in terms of art and creativity. No limitations, no boundaries. You're not bound by a structure that might come with a more poppy sort of lane to be in, or it's just a free form, almost jazz-like in its way. Except for me, prog, I don't judge it off of time lengths of songs and whatnot. I still want to hear a great song inside there. So I'm always trying to find some way to bring a sense of simplicity inside that complexity with the melodies and these hooks happening, but they're surrounded by these very strange sort of interpretations of arranging and whatnot,
Right.
Yeah.
You think that progressive rock musicians are some of the best in the world because of that? Because there's a lot of parts that you have to remember for really long portions and pieces of music. It's insane.
Yeah, and I think it's, if you're looking to expand your playing and your creativity with composition and how that affects your playing, it's definitely the genre to explore because there are no limitations. So you do find more of your better players are in prog. I mean, there's so many, the list is a mile long with all these great bands and individuals out there, but this is where they get to express all that stuff that they've been practicing forever and trying to perfect,
Well, let me ask you this, why have an 8-minute jam when you can pull 4 different pieces of a progressive rock song and potentially make 4 good, straightforward pop rock songs with them?
Well, I mean, for me, it's a flow, and you get into writing a song with a certain mindset, and the lyrics might be expressing some particular vibe, and it just feels like it needs an instrumental section after that so you can sink into what was just said and then take you out of that into the next part, and kind of almost looking at it like a movie where you have a sort of beginning, middle, and an end, and each one is a scene inside the film. So it's just a matter of how long does this scene go before it gets boring. And,
Right.
and is it entertaining, you know, and is it still holding your imagination the whole
Are
time?
you saying that this Arc of Life album is eventually going to turn into a motion picture?
That'd be great.
Well, I always tend to think of music as kind of, you know, a movie for your ears. So, you know, I've often said that in terms of a lot of the records I make are, you know, if you put some headphones on and just give it the time to just sit there in a dark room or staring off into space, wherever you are, doing whatever you like to, taking you away into another place for a while. And that's something that I think the younger generation, those who are discovering what we already know as this wealth of music in the prog genre, new fans discovering it are like, their eyes are opening up to this other world they had no idea of, because they've been sort of, you know, brainwashed into these 7-second chunks of time and sound bites and things that should be over in 10 seconds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Let me ask you this. Frontiers is known for melodic rock. They're known for throwing bands together, and a lot of those bands just exist on album. They don't go out and tour for whatever reason. Is this one of these where you're just thrown together for this project and we get it out there, you do a few interviews and merci, bonsoir? Or does it become a band that is going to tour, and then when Yes and Asia say, listen, no mass, we're done, does this sort of fill the void?
Well, we definitely have the intent to go forward and play live and take it to a stage as soon as there's a stage to go to. You know,
well, they're all open in Florida.
Yeah, there's no COVID. Haven't you heard about it?
Yeah, Florida's COVID free, don't you know?
Whenever it does come back, we're sort of ready on the starting line to pull the trigger and put it all in place. Fortunately for us, our management is the same of Asia and Yes, so their calendars of all the things we're sort of interweaved in can get worked out without conflict. And got a great agency in TKO ready to go. So, you know, we're just...
But is this the band or is it a project?
Oh, it's definitely a band.
Okay.
You know, it's a band in the way that I'm still a band member of Circa, and, you know, I mean, Yes, I mean, Asia. It's a band. It's a band of brothers that wants to do more together and do all the aspects that come with it, as opposed to a project that's more studio oriented. I mean, I do plenty of those where I'm pulling in left, right, and center people, and, you know, there's just no way that that's going to get on a stage realistically. It's logistics out of control. But when you do put a band together, you sort of, you know, before you say you're a band, you have that one talk of like, look, when it comes time to play live, you're ready to do this, right? And as long as the answer is yes, then we're on our way, you know?
Right. Let me ask you a bit of a nerdy question here. You know, as a musician who plays in this genre, how do you go and how do you guys go about crafting a song? Because, you know, progressive music has a lot of different parts and elements when it comes to the arrangement of these tunes and different things. You know, how does a song like that for a band like yours start? Does it start with a guitar riff? Does it start with like a synth pad and somebody starts soloing over it? Or like how does a song happen for you guys?
Well, I know from my own experience writing, it happens in many different ways. Sometimes I'll hear a drum groove in my head and I'll run over to the computer and just jot that down and sketch it and come back to it and develop it into something. Or a lot of times I'm working on sessions for other artists, other people, and as I'm getting the sound, my bass sound together, just to listen back to something, make sure it's good, I might play and start noodling on something, and if I like it, I'll grab that file and put it on the desktop in a folder I have called ideas.
It's mine.
So I'm constantly kind of pulling from different areas. I might be in my car and hearing a melody. You know, You Make It Real was one of those songs for me where I was driving in the car and just kind of heard, you make it real. And I thought, so I sang that into my phone and kind of sang the song, a majority of what we had right there as an idea. But then you take it to the next level and you start really sketching your song out and arranging it and whatnot. But the ideas come from different places of inspiration. It's weird. You know, I might hear something from a television news report that'll set my mind off on something, or, you know, as the case was with the song Siri on the record, you know, I was finishing a gig with Yes somewhere over there in England, and I got back to my hotel after kind of, you know, enjoying hospitality a bit, and asked my phone, you know, Siri, can you set the alarm for 7:30 a.m.? And she said, yes, your alarm is set. I said, thank you. She said, you're welcome. And I started bantering back and forth with this thing. And before I knew it, I was asking it strange things like, you know, do you dream? And it said electric sheep, but only sometimes. And I was like, wow, that's trippy. And then I asked it, do you love? And it said, who, me? And kind of right around that time, I was like, wow, this is a song. Hang on a minute. What am I doing?
I'm going to write one right now. No, hold on.
You know, and so it's kind of strange where things come from, but I try to let all of the spigots remain open, and whatever water flows, I try to catch it when I can.
Oh, interesting, man. Well, you make your real brand new self-titled debut record. It's coming out on Frontiers Records February 12th. To get it now wherever music is sold. What's that really cool red, like maroon Telecaster-ish guitar you got in the background there? It's got a funky headstock. And
yeah, that's my main guitar that I've played and loved forever since I started endorsing Carvin, which you know, the regime change has happened now, so it's a different story. But back in the day, you know, Chris and I both endorsed Carvin, and that's my main telly. It's got a built-in VG pickup to send a synths, and you know, I have a lot of different guitars, but that's the one that's like my main. It's just a telly model, Carvin's telly model. It sounds great, plays great, double octave, love it.
Nice.
Let me ask you just real quick, because you obviously have done the stuff with Asia and done, you know, yes, Chris Squire and John Wetton, two of the greatest to have ever graced a stage. What's it like for you going in there and playing their parts? Do you learn from that? You go, wow, I didn't know you could do that. And does it make you a better player? And how are they similar? How are they different? And what do you bring to the mix?
Well, I had, you know, studied Chris's stuff since I was 14, 15.
A master.
Yeah, I was very well versed on his whole trip. I mean, we used to sit around at his crib and you know, we'd start talking about Silent Wings of Freedom, for instance, and I would say, yeah, you know that one part, I've always dug the way the bass, and he's like, is that what I did? That is what I did. You know, so I had it pretty well down, you know, and it's no secret. He was my, you know, sort of hero, sort of go-to guy. Wetton, you know, I had been following Wetton through Crimson, UK, Asia, you know, all of the outlets that John was involved with. And then I ended up working with him on Raised in Captivity, getting to be able to co-write the record and produce it. So I got up close and personal with him. You know, I wasn't as close with John as I was with Chris, but John and I were definitely close. And so to be able to, you know, have them ask me to do what I'm doing is an honor that I never fathomed in a million years, you know, and I don't take it lightly. I defend that position with my life because, you know, these guys wanted these things to continue. And that's one of the things Chris kept saying towards the end, is just make sure it keeps going on. So, you know, I'm in for the long run to keep these things going. As far as the playing of each guy, Chris's style is completely different than John's, you know. But what's interesting in it is their approach to the compositions of the parts. You know, Chris is like, he's all over the map, you know. Right. John's thing is more in a central area, but the notes themselves are pretty damn cool the way he's got them worked out. So, especially a lot of that UK stuff, you know.
Hey, so can't go wrong with that stuff.
But it is definitely a different approach, you know. It's a different approach. Bass is a funny thing because, you know, a lot of people who might not be able to identify the bass in a mix, they just hear music as music. They're sort of not really getting the beauty of understanding what a bass, you know, like when Paul McCartney plays a bass line, what that's doing to the song.
Or listen, I'm going to throw out Tom Hamilton. You can talk all you want about Aerosmith and say Joe Perry's this and Steven. You take out Tom Hamilton from Walk This Way, Sweet, those songs fall apart.
Well, and, you know, going even further and deeper into the who I, you know, to me, Jocko, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Pistorius.
And
Yeah.
that was a funny thing with Chris and I, because, you know, there was this one time we were on the road and gigs over, we're at a bar somewhere having drinks and getting loaded, and he looks over at me, he goes, "Just admit it, I'm your favorite bass player," he says to me.
And you're like, yeah.
I used to tell him, "You're so close." And he would look at me and go, "Jocko, right?" And I'd say, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So,
Tell about Jocko.
you know, bass is an interesting component to that. And I've
Here,
always
let me just bring it.
Both guys different for sure.
Let me just bring it to the modern day then. With an arc of life, you do have the Yes alumni with you. So do you have to sort of pay homage to those guys and give it a bit of their sound? Or do you just say, no, this is Billy's sound? And at this point, what is Billy's sound? Because you've played the other guys for so long. Do you know where that line is?
Well, I mean, it's a weird thing, because for me, like as role models of producing, in the way that Chris is my hero for being a bass player, my role models for producing, you know, my heroes were Hugh Padgham, Hugh Padgham. You know, he made so many amazing albums, and I can hear a record and know that it's Hugh Padgham. You know, I can just hear him,
like you know, it's Mutt Lange. You
or
hear
Mutt or Eddie. So in a weird way, you know, I've become known as this sound that I bring to the table. And, you know, when that started, it sort of almost rubbed me wrong. It's like, what do you mean? You know, I'm bringing these other guys to the table. And finally, I was just like, yeah, that's my sound. Let's go with it.
Take it or leave it. This is Billy.
Well, let's call it that. Since you're talking about
the other guys, though, you know, it's not just me doing everything. So I'm engineering things and hearing tone the way I hear it. But that's Jon Davison singing, and you can tell, and he just sounds like a bird. And, you know, Jimmy's guitar playing is shredding. I'm just kind of, you know, engineering it in a way where I get it into my comfort zone. And I guess that does have a sound at this point, you know, all these years later.
Absolutely. Let me ask you just real quick. You and I lost a friend in common not too long ago in Bob Kulick.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about Bob, because you did a lot of those tribute records with him. And he was on all these records, whether it's Kiss or Meatloaf and all, and yet he never got to be the guy at the front that everybody went, oh, he's the guitar hero, and yet he was.
Yeah.
Just quickly talk to me about Bob and working with him and what he meant to you.
Well, Bob was a very special guy, and we met through a mutual record company friend, and we started producing records together. I had a studio in Van Nuys where I made ultimately Keys to Ascension and the Open Your Eyes records, and some Motorhead stuff in there. Rat, there was a ton of the stuff that went on at that studio. But Bob, we started working together, and we got along together. We laughed about a lot of the same stuff. Obviously an amazing guitar player, and, you know, as you said, I don't think got the due that he was deserved, but he certainly left a mark in terms of all the things that he's left behind to listen to, that's for sure. And, you know, he was just a New York guy. You know, to know Bob was to love him. You know, he called me when the Yankees played the Dodgers out here, you know, and he's like, "Man, what the hell of a night last night." I'm like, "What's up?" He goes, "I paid $500 for 2 tickets to sit there." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "And you know, I'm a Yankees fan, man. So like I'm rooting." And he says, the guy turns around to me and it turns into a scene, and I'm escorted out by the police. And I thought to myself, only Bob could go to a baseball game and pick a fight with all of LA.
That's hilarious. I wonder if he won the fight, and B, if he was blasting Sweet Victory as he was being dragged out.
Exactly right.
It's all about Sweet Victory.
That's probably my favorite thing that happened with Bob, actually, is that we did that SpongeBob, that silly SpongeBob episode.
Did you play on that, or did you worked on that with him?
Well, I mixed it for him.
Oh,
wow.
Dude, Can I just say, that is like the soundtrack to my childhood, because
now keep in mind here, Jeremy's only 26, so he grew up literally watching SpongeBob.
Well, you know, when my kid was growing up, SpongeBob was all the rage. You know, he's 18 now. So, you know, and so the day that it came on, I kind of looked at him and I'm like, "You digging this?"
Dude,
that's Daddy. Daddy did that.
It's the drum fill in there. Do, 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 do. Like, it's just so good.
Who was the drummer on that?
I don't remember how the track. I know it was David Glenn Isley sang.
David Glenn Isley sang. Bob was on there. You mixed it.
The drums could have been programmed.
Yeah, they might have been. I think we got the files before files. I say files. It was tape back then.
Yeah.
But we probably got the tape before I saw how it was created. But
yeah,
funny. Yeah,
I'm trying to see if I can find out who it was, but I can't see it here. No.
They're probably programmed, man. They just sound so good. And like that's
no, here it is. It says Patrick Starr electric drums.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, yeah, that's Patrick Starr from the TV show. It's
from the TV show, of course. Perfect.
Mitch is like acting like as if there was a big revelation. Oh, it was Patrick Starr.
No, but that's what I was doing. Just real quick, you did, of course, do some stuff with Lemmy and the Motorhead guys. Just what was that experience like? Do they come in? When you produce a Motorhead track, are you actually producing it, or do you just, or does this Lemmy just go, "This is how it fucking works. Leave me alone"?
Well, as a producer, part of your gig is to hold the line if something's going really sideways. But those guys knew what they were doing, and I knew what I was doing. And
of course,
I came into that through Phil Carson, who was the president of JVC at the time. And, Phil gave me a great rep going in. So there was a bit of respect, obviously, that went in there. And we just kind of went in and got on with it and came out with quite a cool track. I mean, Hellraiser's pretty ballsy, in your face track. And then we did one more track with them. I think it was called Hell on Earth or something. That was a bonus track for the film. But just a trip, Lemmy was larger than life, and he was the real deal. He'd show up to the studio with a thirsty 2-ouncer of Jack Daniels with a taste of Coke in there, and off we go.
All you needed.
Well, listen, there was one time in Montreal where I was his driver and I had to drive him around to the gig in the hotel, and he had 2 40 ounces of vodka. And by the end of the night, before the show started, he finished the one in the right hand. And by the end of the night, he finished one. And he was perfectly sober. He was perfectly straight. He played the gig. And I was just sitting there going, that would have killed half of us here. What the fuck?
The most interesting thing I found is that his knowledge of World War II stuff, because he was like a World War II historian.
Buff. Total buff, yeah.
And I mean, for as many of those Jack Daniels or whatever he'd have in his hand, he could tell you, who died in 1944 at Anzio. You know what I mean? It was pretty interesting to sit around and talk with him about that stuff.
Yeah, I remember watching that doc in his apartment just full of like Nazi memorabilia and stuff. And I'm like, this dude was obsessed with it,
Well, he once showed up at my place real excited to show me a Hitler Youth knife and put it on the console. And I said, dude, I'm Jewish. If you don't mind, could you get that thing the fuck out of here?
Oh my God. Imagine he just showed up in full Hitler regalia, like cosplay.
Right?
Holy shit. That would have been funny. Billy, let me ask you this just real quick before we, have to wrap up. Since you're a producer and everything, and you'd be a good person to ask this. Do you think that modern mastering of music is shit? With the brick wall limiter and compression and mastered for iTunes and everything. Do you think?
Well, the mastered for iTunes is just awful.
Well, yeah.
But I think that what I learned early on in my career was how important mastering is and how important the mastering guy is and your relationship with him. And so in my career, I've been fortunate enough that, Joe Gasswert was the guy that I would go to for forever. And Joe, was all about keeping those dynamics at the rate of not being as hot of a CD and all that stuff. And then I began working with Maor Applebaum, who has that same concept of keeping the dynamics pure and true.
Maor is terrific.
The problem is, I think that, you've got to be of the mindset that you want it the way we're talking about, and your mastering engineer has to understand that and maintain it, versus a label and young musicians saying it's not loud enough. Right. Because that's what it really comes down to. It's a competition of like when you're in your cars.
Yeah, it's a volume war.
But that I guess too, the genre is important to consider in that regard too, because if you just got these wall of guitars and it's just this 3-piece of power guitar bass drums thing, you can hit that wall and it almost won't make a whole hell of a lot of difference anyway.
Right.
But if you're talking about, Awaken, for instance, and you're trying to maintain this thing, then you have to err a little under that line and work in the dynamics and let the listener just turn it up a little bit. You know, that's what I always used to say. It's like, just turn it up.
Yeah. Well,
You know?
I heard a funny story from the late, great Mike Shipley, and he was working on a record with Mont Lang for a band called Maroon 5. And so they spent like, 3 or 4 weeks just mixing the stuff, and they sent it off to mastering, and some lackey at the label just ended up doing the mastering. And when they got it back, they were like, this is disgraceful. Like,
well, it's funny how that step, it's not funny, it's dangerous how that step can just destroy all of your hard work.
Yeah. So
which is why you got to have a trust, and Mayor, again, is like, I've got such a trust with him now that, he'll bug me to listen to make sure it's okay. I'm like, dude, I spent 6 months working on the record. I'm sure it's okay. I don't need to listen to it again.
And then it just goes off to the mastering guy in the studio, and it's just like, oh, let's just wipe out all of their bottom end they spent like months crafting.
Exactly. It's a dangerous proposition. And, the thing is, just like everything is about recording, I mean, recording used to be sort of an art form that you had to learn and really respect and understand to get the best of. Yeah. Now it's kind of like just wing it, go for it. So in the same regard, everyone is a mastering engineer by proxy because you can buy these mastering programs, but
they throw an L1 on the master bus and you're done.
So, I've always gone elsewhere because, I know what a critical step that is and how important it is and what that means to the whole project.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that remastering now has just basically meant we're putting out the CD again, but just really loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, but that's not remastering.
I listen to everything I want to listen to from that first generation that was what they wanted, when they wanted it, in that technology field. Working inside that you know what I mean? That's how I like to listen to the stuff I like to listen to.
That's it, and like you said, you can always just turn it up.
Exactly. Just turn it up. And it's not a lot, but it gives you the dynamic, that's where else are you going to get that dynamic from,
Well, you're going to be able to turn up all the dynamics of Arc of Life, their new album, You Make It Real, February 12th. Go pick it up, everybody. It's going to be awesome.
There you go. Thank you for having me, man. This has been a fun time. So
thank you, Billy. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, this was a fun conversation. I enjoyed this.
Right on, man. Well, we'll see you when we get out on the road, once there's a road to be on.
Yes, and keep in mind that he plays with Jay Schellen, who of course was in Hurricane. So that is a great thing right there.
He had the hair to prove it.
That's right. That's right. Great band. I mean, hey, Kelly Hansen went on to.
He had enough hair back then for the whole band right now. We could spread it around and be okay.
I'll take some.
I could take some too, actually. Jeez.
Yeah.
Merci beaucoup, Billy. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Right, see you guys.
Yeah,
cheers.
Great to meet you.
Later, guys. Cheers.